가지 마, 너 이거. 너 가방 싸지 마.
This is an ongoing issue that has been happening for the past 10 years. The government knows it, but they choose to turn a blind eye to this.
This is downtown Seoul, a bright, thriving metropolis that offers hope and opportunity to those who ply its streets, locals and foreigners alike. But for many of the thousands of migrant workers who come to South Korea, the lights of the city are rarely seen. Instead, many live in isolated rural corners of the country, scraping together a living on farms and in many cases suffering abuse at the hands of their employers. These workers from Cambodia, Thailand, Vietnam are all but powerless in this foreign land. They come with few belongings and even less idea of what could be in store.
23-year-old Tina came to Korea from Cambodia 1 year ago. She's just lost her job at a mushroom farm in Cheongju, and she says the farm owner kicked her out before she could collect any of her belongings. She plays a recording on her phone of verbal abuse directed at her.
일하고 싶어요.
아, 일하고 싶으면 다른 데 가서 해. 뭐 그래 고집이 많아. 네 마음대로 해. 어제하고 똑같아.
아니요.
아침부터 목소리 키우게 하지 말고 들어가.
안 가요.
들어가라고.
안 가요.
들어가 이제.
안 가요.
들어가.
왜 가요?
들어가라고.
Tina's story is a common one. As of 2013, there were about 250,000 migrant workers in South Korea, about 20,000 of those in the agricultural industry. Tough work with few protections. Many work under conditions that could equate to forced labour and violate human rights. Abuse or assault, working overtime without pay, inadequate shelter, lack of proper toilets, and threats of deportation. Evidence of this has been caught on camera and documented by human rights groups.
아, 뭐야, 준이나. 네가 뭔데 안 돼? 너 사장님 거야. 내놔. 가, 그리고 가. 등록증 내라고 가. 시끄러! 야, 나쁜 년아. 야, 인연아. 야, 일은 이 기운 없어 일 못해요. 테이블 2개밖에 못해요. 돈은 번 것만 많이 주세요. 다 누구냐 파브리 돈 번 거 많이 주세요.
저는 이해해요.
내놔. 등록증 내놓고 가.
Still, South Korea is a lucrative destination for workers. Salaries are high compared to Southeast Asia, normally about $1,000 a month. And cheap labour is in demand.
It's in rural areas, it's very isolated, it's very difficult work, it's seasonal in nature, so it's very hard to get constant and it's very hard to get salary throughout the year. So it is the type of work that nobody wants to do in Korea, and they therefore need to go elsewhere to find people to work on those farms.
Farmers like JONG-MOON rely on migrant workers on the employment permit system to support their businesses. Down in Haenam, workers are hard to find, and his recruits from Thailand are essential. He admits communication is difficult. He doesn't speak Thai. They don't speak Korean.
그러니까 그런 애들도 있고 좀 안 맞은 애들은 조금 다른데 다른 농장 가면 만약에 뭐 150만 원 준다, 160만 원 준다 그럼 또 가는 사람도 있고. 그러니까 우리나라는 외국인들이 일하기 진짜 좋아요. 자기가 하기 싫으면 노동부 가서 나는 여기 하기 싫다. 그러면 다른 데로 회사를 옮겨주고 그러니까 그렇게 마음에 드는 애들은 계속 있고.
A lack of communication can explain some of the difficulties migrants experience. But why so few protections in a first world nation that mostly looks after its own workers? It's mostly because of one clause in the country's Labour Standards Act, Article 63. It explicitly removes safeguards that protect other workers throughout South Korea. That means no set working hours, no paid rest days, no daily breaks.
그 핑계를 대죠. 근로기준 63조 때문에 그렇다. 노동은 근로시간에 대한 제한이 없어서 그렇다. 밤새도록 일시키고 365일 일시켜도 상관이 없다는 거예요. 이런 법을 놔두고 있으면 안 되죠.
There are some who are looking out for vulnerable migrants, like the people of the Earth Station, known just as Earthian, in Ansan, a working-class city outside of Seoul. It's run by Kim Yi-chan, a trained lawyer who now dedicates his life to providing advice, support and protection. His shoulder is a rare one to lean on.
많은 문제가 있을 수 있는데 지금 행정 당국에서 그 내용을 잘 파악을 못해요. 그러니까 이것이 비인도적인 상황이 굉장히 많거든요. 특히 농업 노동자들의 숙소는 좀 이렇게 오늘날 한국 사람들이 살기에는 굉장히 힘든 곳이에요. 화장실이 없고 목욕실이 없고 그냥 비닐하우스 컨테이너 안에 여름에는 덥고 겨울에는 춥고 그 다음에 잠금 장치도 없는 경우도 있고 그리고 굉장히 어둡거든요.
바지 벗어! 사모님이 사준 거 바지 벗어! 바지 벗어 이거! 저 가방 싸고 나가!
사모님!
아니야 불법 아니야. 너네 외국인 등록증 나왔을 때 불법 아니야.
사모님 괜찮아. 들어오자 안 괜찮아.
Workers say the system makes it difficult to report abuse. If they do, they say the complaint is often lost in a mire of bureaucracy or thrown back at them on the promise by their employer of a resolution. All workers must get written permission from their employer to change jobs, sometimes difficult to gain, and must find a new post within 3 months or face deportation. This is Lee, a 23-year-old Cambodian with no job and a tough road ahead to stay long-term in South Korea.
My mother, my sister, and my brother.
He was working at a ginseng farm before quitting because of the poor conditions. And despite having learned to speak Korean, he has few options. Having not stayed with one employer, like other migrants, he is heavily disadvantaged when it comes to getting his visa extended.
មូលហេតុដែលខ្ញុំដូរការងារដោយសារតែការងាររបស់ខ្ញុំជួបនៅការវិបាកច្រើនតែការគាត់រំលោភបំពានសិទ្ធិការងារហើយនឹងមិនគោរពតាមពីសន្យាស្តង់ដារការងារដែលបានដាក់មកហើយនឹងមិនយកចិត្តទុកដាក់ជាមួយពលករទាំងអស់ដោយការរំលោភរបស់ខ្ញុំ
Lee lives for free at a refuge centre supported by the NGO Earthian and the Khmer Labour Rights Association. He's been here about 2 months while trying to find a new job, sharing this small sleeping space with 6 others. About 50 people are housed in separate male and female apartments. They're grateful. Without this, they would legally have nowhere to go but back home. A series of reports by Amnesty International and Korea's National Human Rights Commission has uncovered many of what's claimed are inequalities in South Korea's system. The double standards, loopholes and the laws not being properly enforced. Yet despite their warnings and advocacy, as well as recommendations from the United Nations, including better monitoring of farms, few changes have been made.
또 농촌에서 일하는 분들의 어떤 외국인 근로자, 노동 문제를 바라보는 시각 자체가 이 산업사의 어떤 임금 관계 이런 측면보다는 과거에 좀 이렇게 쉽게 좀 부리고 쉽게 일을 시킬 수 있는 어찌 보면 좀 머슴 부리듯이 이런 측면이 남아있기 때문에 외국인 노동자들이 실제로 한국에 들어오기 전에 이럴 것이다 생각했던 것하고는 실제 생활하고 좀 차이가 발생하는 그런 경우가 좀 많이 있었습니다.
The South Korean government's Foreign Workforce Division refused to be interviewed on camera for this story, but answered our questions via email. It says it doubled the number of farm inspections last year and is providing extra incentives and training programs to improve worker welfare. But NORMA MUICO questions the motivation to improve worker conditions.
The employment for the migrant labour, so it is intended for businesses that are in the small and medium size enterprises. So they need a constant flow of migrant labour that is cheap and durable. So they want a workforce that won't change jobs, that will continue working under those harsh conditions, exploitative conditions. So it is really designed for the employers so that they can have a sustainable workforce. Yeah? They don't take into account the migrant workforce. This is an ongoing issue that has been happening for the past 10 years. The government knows it, but they choose to turn a blind eye to this because it is convenient for their citizens.
There is a growing movement in South Korea to know where food comes from and to eat food that's organic and exploitation-free. COOP is a co-op which has a motto of ethical consumerism, a beautiful practice. This small kimchi production line is a showcase example of their proper food processes, and many of the employees are foreigners.
저희들의 기준은 내국인, 외국인이 문제가 아니라 똑같은 현장에서 똑같은 일을 하기 때문에 평등의 원칙 위에서 서로 존중하고 배려하는 차원에서 일하는 그런 직원 관계도 있다고 볼 수 있겠습니다.
The group says it deals with fair trade producers, but admits there are still unsatisfactory practices down the food production chain. On a spring weekend, Earthian organises an overnight field trip for 40 Cambodians, most of whom are jobless and craving time to relax. Most of them are barely 20 years old, and this is precious time away from the stresses of their daily lives. They listen to Cambodian music, take selfies, and speak their own language, catching up on the youthful days that they might have enjoyed back home. For the likes of Lee, this is a time for fun and also reflection. Most will stay on in South Korea while they can, but their futures are far from assured.
The plight of migrant workers is a universal issue. South Korea is far from alone in this. And there's a legitimate argument to be made that the futures faced by workers here are much better than in other parts of the region. But those who empathise with the struggles and push for positive change say that's no excuse. There is a responsibility this country must take to protect everyone who makes it their home.